Hey, unmute it, and here we go. Welcome to the Njoycast podcast. Ben is gone for some reason, but I think I can fix that. Maybe not.
Well,
He's here. He's here in spirit. That's what you see, the flashing lights back there.
I've shed my mortal coil, and now I'm in the web zone.
Uh, I need to just dump XSplit altogether and go to back to use OBS. It's better anyway. That's what you used to stream, isn't it?
Yeah, because I'm cheap. Two, it doesn't seem like XSplit really offers much for me. Like,
Yoink.
hello,
Resize
I'm,
you.
I'm here. I'm
Man, this is
alive.
gonna drive me nuts. Like being, we'll just talk while I'm like fucking around with this stuff that we should have had done before the show, but
But we had that fancy please stand by image that we had to take care of.
yeah. Well, that's important. All right, I'm gonna make you less wide. Screw that. Wide bins. That's not fair. Bigger than me. And my cursor's on the screen too. I love that. We do
That's
have
the
video
other.
game stuff to talk about today.
Yeah. I was just
Hold
gonna
on a
say
sec.
that's the benefit of being trapped in a digital prison is you can actually make me less wide. In real life, you have to exercise, diet.
And that sucks. I, I almost we talked about it with something different last week, but I almost hate to say like, oh, I started a new routine because I'm like a week and a half in, and I don't feel that that's like far enough to consider it like a whole life change. Papa.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm gonna delete this too because we're not. That's last week's title.
yeah.
Professional.
I don't know if I'm ever gonna get back on a routine again. I'm at a point now where I'm just sort of doing whatever I want, and it just so happens stuff I want to do is healthier. But it's like I walk my dog and shit and jog with my dog and like that has more to do with the fucking dog because she just has so much goddamn energy. It's like I want to burn her out, and it just so happens I have to be along for the ride.
The problem is I hit a point where just that natural stuff because I walk my dog and I used to run just to run. That's not enough. But so I've
Yeah.
started like an actual like just a 4 day, like 2 days on like upper body and arm strength and then 2 days on legs. And if you follow me on Twitter, you've heard me bitching about it because it sucks. Like,
You're gonna get fucking jacked. And
yes. Where do I get my
it's
steroids? So that's my like
you get your
when
steroids in the new Gatorade protein bar, dude.
there's all sorts of questions when you first start working out. Like, is this the proper form? Is this the best routine? Where do I get steroids?
Where do I put the steroids
Or
when
is
I get
it,
them?
do I have to
Uh,
inject it in my ass, or can I just like shoot up like a heroin? Now,
or
those
you
are one
put
of
you,
those drugs that I really don't understand. Like, maybe it's because I've never had a desire to be like Bane from like the cartoon Batman. But
you're missing out.
even if I did want to look like that, all the side effects to roids are things that I really don't want, like more so than I would want to like be super strong.
Well, I mean, it's really not for you. Like, I never understood, like, you hear stories about, like, high school athletes and stuff, and they'll take steroids and shit, and it's like, steroids aren't for you to cheat. Like, you're in high school. It doesn't matter if you win your stupid fucking trophy. Like, steroids are for the, like, Barry Bondses of the world who, they're actually trying to be the best at something.
Right.
And they found a chemical way to do that.
And I guess I could see the appeal if I was like especially if you're older, like a professional athlete and you had an injury, because there's every injury, especially the older you get as a professional, like threatens to be the end of your career. So anything that you could do to maybe like recover better, I guess I could see that. But no, these like gym rats that shoot up just to get bigger.
Just to look good and shit. Especially now, like I think we're gonna see less steroids as more people start getting like pec implants
That's
and
true,
shit.
which is
It's
way
like, oh, you
easier.
mean I can look that way without doing any fucking work? Awesome.
Yeah.
That's just the most embarrassing thing. Like, because like muscles only feel good because you work to get them. Like that's how I feel when I'm like getting in like good shape and stuff. And you get, I mean, I never look fucking awesome, but once you get some muscle tone going, like you feel good about that because you fucking like you put yourself through weeks of hell to feel that way.
Well, and the
And like,
benefit of like being stronger, like
yeah, you're not strong if you have goddamn like plastic in you. Like,
right. Now I'm thinking of that SpongeBob cartoon that I'm sure you saw because you love children's cartoons for some reason. It's not me. That's not my thing. But he did that. He ordered like inflatable arms, so he looked all jacked, but he couldn't lift shit. Like the bartender put his drink. Well, I'll say bartender. Of course, it's a kid's show. The soda jerk or whatever put his drink down, and it was on top of his hand, and he couldn't even get his hand out from underneath it. But at
yeah.
least he looked good.
Like I don't understand like why we're like so like our surgery's so fixated on like cosmetic stuff. Like, why aren't we going like the Deus Ex route and like, making it so like your implants make you bulletproof over your heart?
Right.
Like that's what we should be trying to figure out. And instead it's like,
Yeah, and give me that freaking like arm blade thing, because
yeah, I want fucking katanas coming out of my elbows. Eh,
that was weird to me though. Like I want them coming out of my like forearms, like going forward, so I can use them like swords, not out of my elbow, so that I'm like die.
Well, no, that's where they came out of. Like his arms shaped, like they fucking clicked out and
Right.
shit. And then they're like, yeah, I don't know, just give me sword arms. I don't know, I don't care where they come out really. Out of my shoulders,
That's
and then like
true.
I'll spin around like a helicopter. I don't give a fuck.
Uh, Video game. I know we have video game stuff to talk about, but
Uh,
just as I'm, tweeting about us not talking about video games, but yeah, I don't know. I made a whole bunch of notes, but not like a show outline because screw that. We've decided long ago that while for most people you should follow some kind of rough script or outline, for us that does not work.
it's just not as fun
Mm-mm.
for me. Like when we tried to do it, like when we first started the show, we tried to be very rigid and like, oh, we'll talk about news for a half an hour and talk about Curly and playing for 20 minutes and then maybe some weird thing in the middle. But I, it's better just because we are so inconsistent with how much we play, and
Right.
it's so inconsistent how much comes out every week. And sometimes we just feel like talking about general shit that it's not really worth it to have any strict format unless we have like a special guest on and that we're interviewing or something, which hasn't happened in like probably over a year um, because we're not special enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so anyway,
But I have notes this week, so at least I can sound smart. That's not going to help me sound smart. Nothing's going to help me sound smart. But I noticed you've been playing the Binding of Isaac. It's like a brand new game. I don't think a lot of people have heard about or something,
yeah.
or
Well,
you're
that's the
just like way
actually
behind the curve.
that's the confusing thing. Like Steam finally had like that Halloween sale you had been waiting for.
Yeah,
Turns out they
after
have it
like
right at the end of fucking
yeah,
horror month, so it worked perfectly for you.
yeah. Thanks,
Um,
Steam.
but one of the items was the Binding of Isaac was like 60 something cents. So, yeah, and I bought like Castle Crashers and Battle Block Theater because I thought those might be good stream games at a later date. But I feel like anything you buy in that Steam sale, it's pretty easy to justify throwing like a 67-cent purchase on top of it.
Right,
Um,
and that's why they do it.
it-
Because if you're like me, I'm like, well, I really want these two games, but it's only $1 or two for all these other games, so I'll just keep adding them, and then you end up
yeah.
spending like $20 and whatever.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself that I kept everything I bought under $15 because there was a lot more temptation there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I just kept it to those three games, Battle Block and Castle Crashers. They were like in a bundle deal, so it was like $8 for both of them. And the thing about Binding of Isaac is like everybody knows about that game, and I've known about it for a while, and it never really appealed to me. But part of that's because I can't follow it anymore. Like I don't know what are like expansion packs, and I don't know what they're calling like sequels and shit. Because now there's like Binding of Isaac Afterbirth, and then there was Rebirth, and
I know, and I had to check like 4 times today, like which one is he playing? Because
I'm pretty sure I'm playing the original.
yeah, that's what it looked
With
like.
like
Well, that's what you
Wrath
listed on your stream anyway.
with like Wrath of the Lamb update or something, and that's just it. I don't know what is really what with that game. Which is fine, because like I'm liking the game, and if you've been following me, I've been streaming it the last couple of nights. Been playing it more than I've been streaming it. I usually start streaming it about halfway through my sessions with that game. Just sort of like, it's late, nobody's probably using the internet in my house. Probably a good time to let the public know I can't do this.
Yeah,
So
I've
that
got
game,
some good stories about streaming things that you can't do, but we'll let you talk
so
about
if you
Isaac first.
so if you don't know that game, it's a randomly generated dungeon crawling like Zelda type, old school Zelda top down, like room to room game that it kind of reminds me of like a mixture of like Rogue Legacy and Zelda, pretty much. Like that's the best way I could probably sum it up. But the twist is you get a really fucking lame weapon where you fight enemies with your tears, and it's like one of the worst. The way I think I described it last night, it's like it's the worst weapon ever in a good game
But
because it's so ineffective.
but now you're describing like exactly how I approach adversaries. It's
You
like,
cry.
yeah, buddy, you want to go? Let's step outside. I'll cry all over you.
This is just the adrenaline, man. Um, and you get like weapon upgrades and stuff, but the game is so random about the what upgrades you get, and it always feels like you're never getting you're never getting too much at once to really help you. And then like if you actually have a good run going, like you get to like maybe the last level or second to last level. The game's pretty short from what I've gathered. Um, like once you get to the second to last level, like it's like, okay, I really need the game to give me some hearts somewhere. Like I just need health so I can take down this boss, and then I should be okay. I have enough upgrades. I should be able to take the final boss, and it doesn't hand you shit. And you just say like, well, fuck, I got to go fight this boss with like a heart and a half. I'm screwed. And then they give you some boss you never fought before, and that's the fucked up thing is just how much variety there is. Like in terms of stuff that's helpful, in terms of stuff that screws you up. Like the game has these pills that you can take, and sometimes the pills are helpful, and it's like, hey, a health up or your speed's increased or something. Most of the time, it's really bad, and it's gotten to the point where I just don't eat any of the pills hardly ever. But I think it's pretty cool that I've been playing since Friday or Saturday, and I'm still like discovering new bosses and stuff in a game that's 5 or 6 rooms, or levels rather.
Yeah, but it's all randomly generated, and I don't know. I know that was one of the things people really like about the game is that it's very replayable for as short as it is.
And it has to be because I haven't beaten it yet. And it's so fucking hard. Yeah, but the one thing I critique it for, I am enjoying it, and for 67 cents, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge, like it's easily worth the money. It's been a lot of fun.
I know we both paid more money for crappier games, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Batman, I'm looking at you. NBA, I'm looking at you. But I lost my point. The one thing I would give it some criticism for in comparison to something like Rogue Legacy. Rogue Legacy was the same story, not a particularly long game and hard as hell. But what I liked about that game was that there was still, even though your character died every time you did, there was still a progression there. like you had that level up tree where you weren't, not every death was wasted,
Right.
you know. And Binding of Isaac doesn't have that going for it at all. When you die, you start over from the
Well,
beginning.
that's the difference between, and people are getting very sick of these terms and this gameplay style, but I like it because it's still relatively new to me. But, a rogue like with a K is like that, where if you die, you're dead. It's game over and you start over. And then something like Rogue Legacy, that's where you hear Rogue Light because it's kind of got that like idea behind it, but you do build up. It doesn't completely throw everything out the
Yeah.
window if you die. So it's like a one letter
But I
difference, and that's where you're getting at there. But I like
but I wonder
both
where the
approaches.
yeah, and I mean it works for some like Binding of Isaac where it's so short that yeah, like if that game had a progression thing, then it probably would be a little too easy, and they would have had to put more levels in there or something to make it worth it. But the term roguelike, like in the context of something like the Binding of Isaac, like by that logic was like the original Ninja Gaiden, like the first roguelike out there. Because I remember in that game, if you died to the final boss, you fucking got sent back to like the very beginning of like this huge chunk of the end game,
Yeah.
and it was horrible. It was one of the meanest things a game ever had done. Like I don't know where the term roguelike originated.
Oh,
That's how
really?
out of it I
I'm
am.
gonna sound like Derek today then.
Right?
There was an old PC game just called Rogue, and it was kind of if I'm not gonna sound like Derek because I'm not that versed in it. I never played the game, but I think it was like it was definitely a dungeon crawler. So that's all that, and that's where today there's a lot of debate about people that actually care about stupid stuff like that, about like what all has to go into a game for it to be roguelike. Because some people say, well, it also has to have that dungeon crawling. Binding of Isaac certainly has it, the way you're going room to room. But it was just an old adventure game like that, where if you died, it was game over. I don't think it even had like graphics, like real actual graphics. I think it was one of those that used like the ASCII characters. Like the at symbol represents your player and whatever, that kind of stuff. So that's where it comes from. Any game that like that, like it's a very old game, I think 80s, and now games like going back to that mechanic, they're saying it's like Rogue or Roguelike. So that
But
was our
it seems
history
it
lesson
seems
for the
weird.
week.
It seems weird because like that genre, it seems to apply to just any game where it's very, very cruel to you if you die every
Well, and
time.
like I said, that's why there's a lot of debate, because there's purists out there that say it has to be like very much like Rogue, and then there's people that use it more loosely, and then they like, I think they meet on the third Tuesday of every month and have a big LARP battle out in some field to determine who can and can't use the term or whatever. I honestly
It's a
don't.
big LARP battle,
Yeah.
and like cars are just driving by. It's two people hitting each other.
We've talked about it with the term Metroidvania, and I think all of us cringe a little bit when these words get used too much. But I
I,
think you agree with me. On the flip side of that, it's a very easy way to convey certain things. Like if I hear this game's very like out of Metroidvania style, I know what you're talking about, and it helps me decide, hey, yeah, this sounds cool, or no, it doesn't.
yeah.
And I kind of approach the roguelike and roguelite terms the same way. Like, yeah, maybe they're overused or misused often, but it gives me an idea of the kind of game.
Well, I think like I mean we've talked about it before, like some like Metroidvania, where it's if I say it and you understand it, that's what your words are
Yeah,
for.
that's English
So you
or
can't
any language, I guess.
you
But yeah,
can't be like, oh, I'm so tired of that word. Why? Because you instantly understood what I was talking about when I used it. Like, why is that?
right.
That should be what we're going for. But I do understand the feeling when it like comes to reviews or something, like where somebody just keeps saying Metroidvania throughout an entire
Well,
review.
and that's a whole different. I had that conversation. Well, not really conversation, but somebody joked about it this week on Twitter. But the word gameplay recently, that's been a big like taboo thing in a review, and I get it. There's absolutely nothing wrong. Gameplay is a real word, and if I say I used it and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but in the context of like either leaks or a lot of it's not leaks, it's publications that are like, oh, we're going to do an hour-long gameplay stream of this game that's not released yet. Well, there's nothing wrong with using gameplay because you're saying this isn't a pre-recorded video, it's us playing a game. But in the context of a review, and I know I've been guilty of this in the past, if I say, oh, it has really tight gameplay, well, what the hell does that even mean? Gameplay is too vague of a word to really use it like that. So I think that's where a lot of the annoyance comes from, is overuse.
But I think
misuse.
That's in that situation, like you would say, like if you told me tight gameplay, I don't really know what you're talking about. But if you tell me like the shooting feels tight in a game, for some reason I know what that means.
Well, and see, and that's
like
what
roughly,
and that's where I'm separating. And I don't even if I'm just a dude talking to another dude or chick, we're inclusive here on Njoycast podcast. And I use the word gameplay, like I really like the gameplay. That's fine, but as a reviewer, you should be better with your words. And I say that from somebody that's very guilty of not even being that.
As a reviewer, like just if you consider yourself a writer on any level, I don't know how you don't hate yourself when you find yourself repeating same words and phrases. Like I still struggle with that, and I like go back and read things I wrote that I was really proud of at the time, and I just cringe at how often I say certain things.
And now my stupid mind's taken me to a place where I'm picturing Stephen King sitting down at his keyboard, and he starts out like, "It was a really bad weather day." Like,
I wonder for Stephen King if like the word "it" fucks him up now, just because he had that entire book. It's like, how often does everything have to be described as "it"?
Well, back to Binding of Isaac, I did have one note here that it was a little controversial. Didn't Nintendo refuse to put it on their platform for a while? And I think it's on the DS now. I think it is available.
I don't actually know.
I can't remember. There was something about that censorship and this and that, and mostly because, and it's funny because I consider myself a Christian, and I go to church usually almost every Sunday. And I knew that there was religious themes behind the game, and I don't think it's meant to be super serious, but there is, it wasn't just a random story. They used religious dogma or whatever as a backdrop for the game, and I just today hit me like that. Even the title, "The Binding of Isaac," was literally talking about when Abraham bound his son Isaac.
Yeah.
So that's how astute I am with that stuff.
So yeah, it did get a 3DS release.
Okay, but I'm pretty sure that Nintendo kind of huffed and puffed for a little bit first, and then people complained.
Well, like you can tell when like something is a hot button deal based on how many like spam retweets you get. Because the first night I streamed it, I titled the stream "The Problem with Organized Religion," and like I don't know
this podcast that this week,
and and I got so many fucking like favorites and retweets from like these spam accounts or whatever, and I was like, okay, they think this stream is going to be more controversial than it actually is. Like, And it was one of the few times I was like actually kind of thankful that we're not very popular, because the last thing just as an experienced person on the internet, the last thing you want is to spark a goddamn religion debate on like a video game thing.
Yeah, especially when you're not really serious about it. Like, I guess if you have an actual issue or something, that's one thing.
Yeah, if I did it intentionally, then that would be my own fault. But if I was just like making a joke about the game I was playing, I would have felt like if I just like turned to the chat and everybody's losing their shit, I would have just like probably closed the chat, shut off my computer, gone out and lived in the woods.
Yeah. And by explaining the title, I ruined my own joke, but that was part of my notes as I wrote down that that is loosely based on a religious story of Jesus and the Basement Monsters.
It's loosely based off that biblical Goosebumps story. There's a bunch of spiders in a basement.
Right. Um,
Um,
and I do have a note here that it's currently, and I think you probably, oh, I know you did because you said it. This Steam sale on it is over, but it's still only it's $4.99, $5 on Steam, and I kind of thought it was part of a current Humble bundle, but I didn't have time to check.
not right now, no.
Okay,
I just looked at the Humble Bundles today, and
yeah, it might have been
because
a recent one,
I'm a
but
leech,
yeah.
and I'm always waiting to like take shit for way lower than it's valued.
Now here's the funny thing: me and you haven't talked at all since last week's show, but we have a good theme going because the two games that I have to talk about for currently playing are both also roguelikes, or roguelite, depending on how you want it. Whatever. Fuck it, I'm
I
sick of that
watched
already.
your I watched your after the stream. I didn't see it live. Uh, what was it?
Cryptarch.
Yeah, Cryptarch. I
That's the
watched that.
closest I've ever been to crying on stream, by the way. Like I was getting so frustrated. Like I probably didn't show it as much on stream as I was actually feeling internally, but it was pissing me off. But like not
Just
necessarily like in a
not to
bad
interrupt
way.
your thing, but that was the same thing with Binding of Isaac. I think that was the if you watch the pre-recording or not the recording on YouTube, it ends with me just going ah like
Well, that's the funny
that's
thing is I was trying to like maintain my like host. I don't want to say persona, but like composure. That's probably a good one. Like, oh yeah, in this game you do this, and here now you want to do that, and then like a million fucking things would just like show up out of nowhere and blow me up in 2 seconds, and you're just
I
like,
kind of
yeah. So this is
I kind of want
hard.
you to be all dressed up when you stream, and then we can watch you like steadily like progress to like you're loosening your tie and sweating, and it's like it's becoming like the ending to like Airplane or whatever. You're just pouring
See,
sweat and fucking
you
nervous.
say that, but a lot of times when I stream, it's when I first get home from work and I don't bother to take off my tie and dress shirt. And I
Can you?
also enjoy streaming with a glass of bourbon. Which, if you're playing something frustrating like Cryptarch, you'd see me like start hitting more and more frequently. So, I mean, what you're saying is not far off of how I normally stream.
I don't know how you can keep a fucking tie on. I can barely keep
Well,
wearing a vest after I.
that's where your thing breaks down because you say, "Oh, like as I'm getting stressed, I'm loosening." I never wear my tie like even at work. It's loose because fuck having anything around your neck. That's stupid.
I just like the idea of like you like a pilot trying to keep the damn plane
Hmm.
up, just like pouring sweat, like a fucking cigarette in your mouth while you're lighting another one. Just
I I do
just
have a
trying to
cigar
figure
close
a
by
game out.
too, so man, we can recreate. I'll just got to make sure to have this all set up because that's naturally how it'll progress. I will stream Cryptarch again. Somebody said that the audio was pretty too high on the game. It's a loud game to begin with.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. The whole premise is you're this like third party scavenging space like cowboys basically. You're a scavenging crew that was hired by some shady organization to raid the Cryptarch, which is a giant fortified derelict space like outpost. You're supposed to be doing it to retrieve some kind of top secret alien technology, blah blah blah. But the way it's set up, there's multiple stages, and it's like Binding of Isaac. There's more than five, but I think there's only like seven total, counting the Cryptarch. Might be eight. And so the first stage, you'll have four different like derelict ships to choose from that range in difficulty, and of course, the more difficult you do, the higher potential it is for items that you'll find that help you, and the money that you get for doing it. The part that gets me is like the first two stages have level one ships, so the easiest ships you can do, and I'll do those, and they're still not that easy. And then you get to stage three, and it jumps from one to like the lowest you can do is three, and I can't fucking beat them. And the whole time you have a budget. When you complete missions, you get money. Um, you would think you could kind of farm, but the way it's set up, like in stage one, there's four different ships. You pick one, and when you're done with that, it moves you to stage two. You can't like go do one of the other ships that you didn't do, so you can't really sit and farm money. And before each mission, whatever technology you found or unlocked, or the base stuff that you have, you can outfit your ship, but everything has a cost to it. So the more you outfit, the more you're taking out of your budget to, outfit your ship. So ideally, you want to take the bare minimum that you think you're going to need. That way, you make more money. But I mean, this game is really fucking hard. Like I was talking to somebody today, and I said it doesn't so much have a difficulty spike as a difficulty flaming spear. Like it you just go from like, yeah, that's kind of hard, but I'm getting some new technology that makes it easier, to just like lasers and turrets and enemy drones and like all this shit coming at you from every direction at once. And where it's roguelike or whatever is in that if you die, if you have enough money left in your budget, you can retry the mission, but you never have a whole bunch of extra money. And if you don't have enough money to retry the mission, it's game over and you start back from level 1. You have to, start a new playthrough. I haven't decided, like, it's really tense and really stressful and really frustrating, but it's fun, and I can't decide if it's that good frustrating. Like, we've got a lot of games that me and you both like. Trials is the one that we always bring up. But I can't decide if it's like Trials frustrating or fuck this is like completely unbalanced frustrating. It is still in early access. The other interesting thing, because Alien Trap is the developer, and they're one of those developers that have done a handful of games that I've heard of, but didn't realize it's all from the same people. You'll love this. They're the ones that did that Apotheon that you loved so much.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. I just thought it was all right.
Yeah. And to be honest, so far that seems to be the trend. I didn't play that one, but I know you, like you said, it didn't like sing to you, but it wasn't the worst thing ever.
It was interesting. There's not too many games out there like it, but it's not the smoothest experience.
Yeah. And that's what Capsized is another one that I didn't realize. Even when Apotheon came out, I didn't realize that they were the same people that did Capsized. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. It wasn't anything that became real well known. I actually have it on Steam because I bought it back when I had just my laptop, hoping I could play it, and it didn't run very well. And it's another one of those kind of Metroidvania type games. So they've done that, and now Cryptark. Cryptark's in early access, so I'm kind of hoping that it'll get some difficulty like balancing before it gets fully released. But it's currently $12.99 on Steam, so it's not a super cheap early access game, but it's not it's not real expensive.
Yeah.
So you'll see me streaming if you follow us on Twitter or just follow us here on Twitch. I do plan on streaming some more of it, and I probably will cry. I wasn't really joking, and it wasn't like that like cry, but it was like that out of sheer like frustration. Like I can't fucking believe this. Like, ugh. And then fortunately, like my wife was out of town and she called, so I knew she was on her way back, and that gave me an easy out. Like, oh yeah, darn, I gotta quit playing now, not because I'm about to like kill something. But anyway, the other one I picked up, and I've been wanting to play this for a long time, was Flame in the Flood. And I don't know if you've followed that or if you're familiar with that at all.
Nope, I don't know anything about that one.
It's got one of those stories that behind it like that we've never heard before, where a bunch of AAA developers who left their big companies came together to form an indie studio, like pioneers.
Yeah.
No, but I make fun of it just because that's such an overplayed story. But this is the kind of game. This is why developers do that. Flame in the Flood was kickstarted, and it was successful on Kickstarter. I don't know how much it made. I probably should have looked that up. But when I say I make notes, I mean I made the bare minimum amount of notes that I need to remember what I wanted to talk about. But basically, Flame in the Flood, you play as this, I don't say little girl. She's probably in her teens. It's very stylized, so it's hard to get like a, and it's got a really cool visual style, but you don't get like a real specific age range or whatever. And you start out in this like derelict campground, and there's a dog. Any game that has a dog sidekick, that's bonus points. But there's nobody else around, and it's basically a third person. It's like an overhead Zelda type view. But it's a survival sim. Like Don't Starve, it would be similar to that. Flame, where it gets the title "Flame in the Flood." You're of course the flame or spark of life or whatever, and the game takes place on this like raging river. And you have this little like makeshift raft that you can upgrade. But basically, you have to hop on this raft, and when you're on the raft, the gameplay is avoiding smashing into something and getting hurt or breaking your raft and dying that way. And as you travel upstream, well, downstream, I guess, you'll come across points where you can anchor off and go scavenge for materials. Saplings to make wood, to make a bow and arrows and that kind of stuff. Things to make medical supplies. Food and water, of course, are very important. It'll rain, and if you get wet, if you don't find shelter, then you need to warm yourself. You need to make a fire or find a fire, that kind of stuff. And I bought it thinking this will be a cool game to check out because it's a different idea. I like the visual style, and I like those kind of survival games. I know they're not necessarily up your alley. I didn't expect it to be as hard as it is either. Right now, it's also in early access. There's going to be like a story mode or a campaign mode, I think they call it. But that's not available yet. Right now, you basically just have the endless mode where you see how many days you can survive, but also how far down this river you can travel. And you're basically just competing against yourself and leaderboards for, surviving the longest. And the very first time I played, I survived a grand total of like 3.5 or 4 days. So it's very realistic because me in real life, if there was a flood that I was trying to like survive something like that, 4 days is about the max I think I'm going to make it.
Yeah, that would probably be me too, because I would just focus on my boat.
Yeah.
And not remember that I need to eat.
That's where the real, and I've completely skipped over like half of the hook to Cryptarch back when I was talking about that, but whatever. But that's where the hook to Flame in the Flood comes in, and it's similar for most of these survival games. Is you're constantly, like when you stop at a location, it only has certain resources and only so much of them. But you also have an inventory. You can only carry so much. And there's always like some kind of pressing need. You're like, okay, I'm gathering wood. Should I make a rudder for my boat so I can steer it better? And then you get attacked by a wolf, or in my case, it's usually a wild boar. If they hit you, it breaks your fucking leg and you have to make a splint. So it's like, well, fuck, there goes my wood because I need to make a splint so I'm not hobbling around or I don't die of this wound. Food is constantly an issue. Water, not as much in the early game because you start with a jar and you're on a fucking river. So it's pretty easy to fill up the jar. You have to purify the water, but you start with a filter as well. And anytime it rains, you get wet and cold, but the one benefit is rain, you can use your jar and collect clean water and not have to use a filter to make it drinkable. So I don't know. It's like, I'm sure I'll stream some of that as well. I've been really like wanting to play this game ever since it hit early access, ever since it hit Kickstarter. I thought it looked cool. I've been kind of keeping an eye on it. It's just one of those things I never got around to buying. It is $20 in $19.99, so it's not a cheap early access game. But I had some money. I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy a game. I'll buy this one that I've been wanting for a long time. And I'll admit, in its current state, I'm not thrilled with it. Like, I probably,
$20 is a lot to slap down on an early access.
Right. And I think that's part of it. It's not that it's bad, it's that it's still rough and not all the features are there.
Yeah.
And then some of the things, like, I feel you'll come across like the different types of places you can land each have their own, like you'll have a little icon and it looks like a farm, and that means it's a farm. There's probably going to be food there. The whole time you're moving up, you're downriver, the current's pushing you, so it's hard to steer. Even if you see a place that you want to land, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to maneuver your raft there. And a lot of times there'll be, two different icons on the opposite shores of the river, and I can probably hit this one, but if I do, I can't get the other one. So you're constantly, it does have that going for it. But all the areas, they're randomly generated, but they're very small, like in size. So it's not, I expected it to be more exploration, like bigger world that you're exploring, and it's not. It's very tiny. And they all feel very generic. Being randomly generated like that, you'll constantly see like an old school bus that you can use for cover. But like, how many school buses are you going to come across in real life if you're, rafting down this river? I'm hoping that they'll add more variety to the environment. I know they did just add a new biome. I've not gotten there because apparently you have to get farther down the river than 4 days. But that's one of the things I'd like to see. When it's early access, like you said, $20 is a lot of money to spend on early access on promises of what might come down the road. But I do still have hopes for the game. So yeah.
How dare you have hope?
Yeah.
I'm going to go turn on a light to my room because how dark my room is getting now at 4 p.m. is kind of disturbing me.
It
makes it seem like I'm gothing the fuck out of the show.
Yeah, I don't want to spend time like bitching about daylight savings time. I'm just trying to talk while you go turn the light off, by the way. So,
shoot. All right, can't tell.
But yeah, it's every fall. It's like, oh right, now it's light earlier, and I can do stuff in the morning, and then you realize, oh shit, that means it's dark at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. What was really funny about daylight savings time was the day I had to go into work at I had to get up at 5 a.m. And everybody was like, "Oh, well, daylight savings time, you get to sleep another hour." And in my fucked up head, it's like, "Oh, I get to stay up another hour."
That's the thing. You only get an extra hour of sleep if you go to bed before midnight.
Yeah, I don't. I can't go to sleep before midnight. There's something wrong with me where it's like I'm not tired until at least midnight, if not 1 a.m. And even when I am tired, it'll be some weird shit like what happened last night where my dog peed on my fucking pillow. Because he's a
you can't just
son
lay
of
on
a
it.
bitch.
Like, I'll clean this in the morning. It's warm and squishy.
Here's the fucking reality to all you non-pet owners. You don't have psychic awareness that there will be pee on your pillow until you put your head on it. And then great, that was my face.
Yeah, that or stepping in barf or other things.
Just your bathroom looks like shit through no fault of your own because some dog got in there where there's a cat litter box and they went crazy. And
buffet, it's sweet.
Yeah, you fucking pets, man, they're terrible.
Yeah, my the one Pew is always the worst. Charlie, our dog that passed away back in April, she had seizures her whole life, and when she'd have a seizure, a lot of times she'd void her bowels because that's kind of one of the things that happens when you have a grand mal seizure. But sometimes she'd have them at night, and we wouldn't know because we'd be asleep, and a lot of times that would wake us up, but not always. But at least when that happens, you wake up, and there's at least the warning system of, hey, our whole house smells like dog shit. There's dog shit somewhere. Watch where you step. Pee, you can't always smell. You just be like, it
can't smell until you're right in it. Until you've upset the chemicals at work.
And it seems counterintuitive, but it's always way worse to step in. See, we have hardwood floors. It's probably just as bad with carpet because it just holds it there in one place for you. But with hardwood floors, I mean, if you step in it, you stepped in it. It's your foot's where it's going to go because there's nothing soaking it up. And it seems counterintuitive, but it was always way worse when that happened while you were wearing socks.
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time in my house. The dog, my dog G, who we had to put down earlier this year, once he got older, his bowels, you lose all control of them, and it's just a nightmare. But I have less of a problem with that because that's just age. And he had been a very good dog about that. He rarely peed or shit in the house unless he was sick or something. The dogs we have now, one's a puppy, so she's just stupid. Complete fucking idiot. Probably will be her entire life. I'm not giving her any hope. The other dog, he's just an asshole. Wait, it's not all about me. I'm going to pee on your couch.
Yeah.
Wait, you're taking her for a walk, but not me. I'm going to pee on your couch. He waits for a reason to pee on your shit. And it's always you know who did it, every time. Because, I'll walk down into the kitchen, and I have hardwood floor down there. and I'll step in it, and you always know it's him because you just see his ass just going out of the room at the last minute,
Yeah, like,
right
ha
when
ha
you're about
ha.
to fucking blow up. Like, just
So he
like,
like not only does it, but then he'll like kind of sit in the corner and wait because
yeah,
he wants to watch the
yeah,
like fruits of his labors.
he's like peeking around the corner, like now he'll walk in it, and now he'll know that I should have every bone. Like,
See, now I'm having flashbacks of my Metal Gear like playing where you lay a trap and then you just like hide behind a tiny rock that you know that they would should be able to see you anyway, but they can't. And you're like, and now to wait. And then when they hit it and the shit hits the fan, you just like giggle and run away.
yeah, it was always fun when I like set a trap and it like not a trap, but like if I wanted to blow up an enemy air radar, uh, like I'd slap the C4 to that. I would go to the other side of like the outpost or whatever, and like you couldn't even see the radar anymore from that point, but you could still use your C4. And I would activate it, and then it would be like, "Oh, you just blew up two cars along with that," and I'm like, "Oh shit."
Yeah. Well, take that, jerks.
Yeah, oh fuck them.
It's almost as if in real life, if you set an explosive and then went to where you can't see it and detonated it, you might take out like something you didn't intend to.
Oh, almost like there's such a thing as collateral damage.
Yeah. Well, it's November, which is a stressful time for anybody that pays for their own video games. I guess there's really, I was looking at it because it's a fairly big week or two in gaming, but there's really just three like big ones that, well, four.
I'm curious what the other three are. Like for me, it's like Fallout 4, and then I'm like calling it a year.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And oh, ring cell phone. Because after 220 episodes, my wife doesn't know that we do the podcast on Wednesdays. Anyway, that's
It's
me.
probably very important.
Fallout 4 is the one that me and you, I think, are actually like interested in playing. And I've got not a lot, but a handful of stuff to talk about with that. Black Ops 3 comes out this Friday. I know neither of us care about that, but it is a big release in the industry. Like it or not, it's going to sell an ass load of copies.
Yeah.
Rise of the Tomb Raider, I would be way interested in, except for it's got that Xbox exclusivity where it's coming out on Xbox. I put Xbox One. I don't know if the 360 version is also coming out now. I think so.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to... that's one of those, I'm not going to play it on 360 when I have a better system in my PC so I can play the better version of it. PC version doesn't come out until... They just have it listed as 2016. It'll likely be early 2016. But I think there's like a 1 year, like, I don't know what word you'd use for it because I'm not good with my words. PlayStation 4 is not getting it for a long time because of that deal with Microsoft, but it will eventually come to PlayStation 4 as well. I really liked the Tomb Raider reboot, which is weird because, and we've talked about it before in the show, and I said something on Twitter today, like, if I look at the Tomb Raider reboot and like look at the individual parts, like, oh, I hated the gunplay. I hated the fact that your torso gets impaled every 2 seconds and you walk around going, just like that. I hate this, I hate that. But as a whole, I liked the game. It works together. And that also leaves me hopeful that in Rise, they improve on some of that stuff. The embargo's still up, I think, for the reviews. But I know enough people that are playing it that, like, when you follow games reviewers or just journalists in general, it's one of those like, oh, I can't say anything about this awesome game that I'm loving a bunch. It's like, okay. But it's had a pretty positive buzz from the people that I've known that that are currently playing it for review or just early versions, or people that have played it at expos and stuff. So that's when I'm excited that it's coming out. It's just I can't play it until the PC version comes out. And then the fourth one is probably the least hot of the releases, but Star Wars Battlefront comes out in not this week and not next week, but the week after on the 17th. Um,
Feel- Feels like that game, like the way people have talked about it, the way people on my job have talked about it, it just seems like it should have been out for like a month now.
well, that's the
Like,
problem. We could probably do an entire show, and we probably have on. I was thinking about it today. At some point in recent history, in the last 5 years, and I really do blame games like Call of Duty for this. Betas have become, instead of being about bug finding and playtesting, betas have become a marketing tool. That's what they're using them for. Um, and Battlefront's one of those. I mean, it's been available for a lot of people to play for a while. And the problem with that, it's the same with early access. And I don't get why publishers aren't like, they're just completely ignoring it. You lose a lot of launch steam for your game when it's been out for a big group of people for some time. Early access, what I hate about that, and I see it a lot even with games I like and from developers I like, a game will be available for purchase on early access for 2 years sometimes before it comes out, and by the time it comes out, it's old news. You know,
yeah,
and that's where the Battlefront early access or beta or whatever you want to call it was restrictive in, what content you could play and this and that. It was really just a glorified hype demo of the game. But I do think it lost a lot of steam with that. And I've been hearing a lot of mixed things. There's some people that are like really insanely excited for it, and a lot of people that are like, oh, I've played early access or beta or whatever the fuck it is, and it's not that good. And so, but
yeah.
I'll admit it's marketing works. I know this when I have coffee creamer at work that's shaped and plastered like Darth Vader. And the whole reason, I make fun of it every time I use it, but at the end of the day, I fucking bought it because I looked over and like, hey, Darth Vader coffee creamer. And of course, it was a flavor that I like. But my point is, at the end of the day, it might be like having like a lukewarm reception to the beta and stuff, but it's fucking Star Wars. And that's keeping me interested, even though people haven't been like head over heels for it.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people are probably like, I think that's where a lot of the positivity comes from, is just like we want Star Wars games to be good. Well, most
Well,
people do.
if you're like me, and I don't know, I'm sure we've talked about it. I don't know where Star Wanks sounds like a porn. Star Wars ranks in your life, but for me, growing up as a kid, Star Wars. I mean, I've watched the original trilogy like 4 million fucking times. Me and my friend that were both like really big into it would buy like Star Wars everything, the trading cards, the trading card game, video games, whatever. I'm sure I had Star Wars underwear at some point. And then of course the new ones came out, and a combination of being older and having other things going on in my life at that point, and them kind of sucking. The newer three don't do anything for me, but with the new movie coming out in December that we've talked about, and for me, it's hitting on all the nostalgia, like the right, like original, like Star Warsy notes. So that's very much helping the Battlefront thing, and I know they do that on purpose. That's not an accident. It's just the idea of being able to like relive all these childhood like things that you imagine. Like I can fly an X-wing, I can be Luke, or weirdly for me, I'm less excited about the fact that they have legendary characters like Luke and Darth and Han in the game. Because, well, I don't like the idea that you can play as them. I like that they're there, but they're almost like the Untouchables. Like they should be in the universe, but I should just be some rebel or Imperial soldier. But anyway, yeah, I'm keeping my eye on it. I wouldn't be surprised if I break down and buy it. It won't be at launch because it literally comes out on my wife's birthday. And if I buy that instead of buy her a present, I won't have a wife anymore.
You could make that her present, and what better way to be together than to have her watch you
Play
play
games,
a
right?
multiplayer Star Wars
Especially
game?
for she hates Star Wars. I shouldn't say that. I don't want to get the nerd mobs after her, but
How
she
do
has
you?
never been able
How,
to get into.
I mean, I admit that like I'm not the biggest Star Wars guy on the planet. I think like the original trilogy, I'm like everybody else. Like those, that's a great trilogy of movies. The prequel trilogies are terrible. So the way I look at that series is like it's, 50-50 right now. And like the new movies might be good. They might be terrible. I think they'll probably just be all right, kind of good, cinematic thing. Um, but I can't say I'd understand how you can like hate Star Wars. Like I can understand like for me, I don't want to watch them all the time. I
Yeah,
don't
hate.
even.
I probably shouldn't have said hate. That's probably too strong of a word. But she's never seen them because she's tried, and she's like, yeah, every time I watch them, I get 5 minutes in and fall asleep. She just is
Well,
disinterested. She does not care about Star
I
Wars.
I sympathize with that because the fourth movie is fucking boring. Like yeah, at first, like it takes a long time to get going. Anything that starts with that fucking ship slowly panning into the goddamn
But if you
thing,
stick
and
with it, you get to see Luke's aunt and uncle get completely fucking fried, and he's the one to find it. I love that. Like, how many like movies that you consider classic include finding your parents like smoking ashes?
yeah, I actually didn't understand that when I first saw the movie when I was a kid. I just thought it was two random burnt people. Um, didn't
Auntie
really
and uncle
understand.
murdered two people, burned the place down, and left. Which could happen. Who knows?
They're
Maybe
with
that's what
the
happened.
Empire.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
Luke assumes that his aunt and uncle are dead, but really they killed the stormtroopers that came to question him and then knew they had to flee to intergalactic Mexico.
that's the thing I don't understand about the new movie is like, why the fuck are there still people living on Tatooine? It's a hellhole.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like living in Boron, California. It's just fucking desert.
but it's got the cantina with the alien
So
bands.
does Boron, but you shouldn't live there.
No. But
Uh,
I'm excited for the movie. Speaking of movies, because we're not just a video game podcast. We
we're
all
movie
encompassing.
buffs.
Yeah. We went and saw The Martian last night, and I don't want to talk about it. That's not why I'm bringing that up.
Okay, we'll see you next week, everybody.
Goodbye. Before the movie, most of the previews we had seen already, but there was a movie that I kind of feel like I'd heard about, but it was the first time I saw the trailer. It's called The Revenant, and it looks really fucking cool, which is shocking because the main character is Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know
It's
when.
not like it was the old days,
I know.
Steve.
I don't know when that happened because like he came around. He got real big when I was in high school, but it was those like real prissy roles,
Well,
Titanic,
no,
of
I
course, and
mean, nothing makes me happier than watching that fucking kid Leonardo DiCaprio like cry like a little bitch in Romeo and Juliet.
yeah, that. And
Oh,
then what was the one like Blue Lagoon or something? I don't
I don't know
know.
if
The
he's in
beach,
that.
maybe. There was a
He's in a
handful of like really like obviously targeted at teenage girls movies. Um, so that's where my like background in Leonardo comes from. And then at some point when I quit paying attention to him, he became a really cool actor. Like he's been in a couple things. Was he was in Django Unchained, wasn't he?
yeah, he was the slave owner
Yeah, that's
bad
what I
guy.
thought. I
He,
haven't
he,
seen that. I need to see that. I've wanted to see it since it came out, and I just never have because it's the kind of movie that this one I can unabashedly use the word hate. Tara would hate that movie,
yeah,
but
I thought it was really good. Don't know if it's like Tarantino's kind of weird. Like there's a like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction to me are these movies that I can just watch all the time. Like they're then he hit some point where he got really kind of like Tarantino got really long-winded and stuff, and like every movie had to become these goddamn epics.
that's the
And
and to be honest, that's what's kept me away from Django is because I could watch it while my wife's at work or something, but it's like 3 fucking hours long,
yeah,
and that's
it's pretty fast-paced though. Like it does. I have to give it credit. Like the first time you watch it, like it's moving pretty quickly, and like there when the movie seems to slow down, it's slowing down in a like cool way, like into like really funny scenes, and like there are certain scenes where like the KKK is trying to like attack, like it's like Django and the other guy, like they're
Unchained.
trying to attack. Yeah, they're trying to attack their campsite, and they're spending the whole time arguing over their hoods and how like the eye holes don't fucking line up appropriately and shit, and how they don't want to wear them. And it's a really funny scene.
There's
But
that
it's
Tarantino's new one that's coming out. What is that, like nine, the Furious Nine or something, or
Furious. I don't think it's the nine. The
eight?
Hateful Eight.
Eight, yeah, there we go. Furious Nine is
Um,
the next Fast and the Furious movie that'll come out. Fuckers.
Furious Nine.
I hate I hate that franchise, and everybody else loves it. But anyway, yeah, that one looks interesting too. But I'm worried it's going to be too long for me. Um, Now I forget what we were even talking about. How
Surprised,
Tarantino
I'm
came up.
surprised. I'm surprised you're interested and thought well, you're a cop guy and cops are boycotting him because he has an opinion like every celebrity does about everything. Um,
Here's my
like he,
thing. Well, for one, when I view someone like his work, it means I'm red boxing it, and he's getting the absolute minimum amount of money from me. And it's not like that's not
I
like a
showed him.
statement or a protest statement. That's I'm a cheap ass, and that's how it's going to work. Sorry. Um, no, I there's a lot of I really like Sean Penn in movies, but he's a fucking whack job in real life. A lot of actors that I really like are just. I think what happens is when you make enough money and you get a big enough name and you live in Hollywood where everybody kisses your ass wherever you go, you kind of lose touch with the actual real world around you. And unless you actually go out and like start murdering prostitutes or something, I can forgive you for that because I'd probably
Yeah,
become out of touch too if I had millions of dollars and everybody was afraid to tell me no.
yeah. So do you know what I'm talking about with him?
No, no, I
And
hadn't even heard of
uh,
it.
um, well, I mean, we won't get into it. This is a case where I don't think he said anything that crazy. Um, I think he just said it in a way that inspired a lot of, us versus them
Yeah,
blowback and stuff. And because, police shootings and stuff, they're a hot button issue right now. So I think the way he phrased what he said, it's getting a lot of like cops like, well, fuck him. And it's like, well, what he's saying is that there have been cops that have shot people unjustly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you can't
You
deny
can't
that
argue.
that's happened.
What you were
Um,
alluding to for people that don't know my background, my degrees in law enforcement. I've been through police academy, and I tend to side when these things come up. I see it from the criminal justice, the law enforcement side. But
right.
it's undeniable that there's times when police shoot people that they absolutely should not have done, and not
Yeah.
necessarily just shoot, but use force in situations where they shouldn't have. The worst of the
Right.
worst is when they shoot them, but there's
Yeah, and I'm
right.
not gonna say I can't fully defend him because I don't know the full extent of his quotes or whatever, but it does seem like something he would do where it's just like he has, a position and then he just sort of says it in the most like incendiary way possible, and now people are like, oh, I'm gonna boycott your movie or whatever, and it's like you you can't be surprised that Quentin Tarantino has his position on this, like.
Yeah, and it's not like it's the first time he said something that's vastly unpopular with people. And I don't know the guy. He's probably doing it on purpose. It gets you publicity. Um,
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even, I can't even be that suspicious of like his motives or whatever. I think that's who he is
yeah, that could
just,
be
a
too.
very outspoken, loudmouth, creative as fuck, individual. And,
It's one of those things,
and
though. He's one of those guys where what he does, he's probably one of, if not the best in the world at it. But when you say creative as fuck, I have a slight pause because it's like he can only do, or I've only seen him do the one type of movie. He does it really fucking well, But
I think you're right, but one, I don't think there's anybody else who can do that type of movie, and two, he is able to do that type
mm,
of movie in a variety of settings.
he didn't do Seven Psychopaths, did he? That was
No, that was a I don't remember the guy's name,
yeah.
McDonough or something,
But
or
I would put
like.
something like that pretty close to what
But even
Tarantino
that to
does.
me is more unique because I love that director too. But I think that's a style kind of all of its own, dialogue driven, but um, it's not the same type of like Tarantino's almost like dialogue driven action flicks, while those are more kind of dramas or something with like some action elements.
It's just a murder
Um,
sim. Tarantino's a murder
yeah,
sim.
it's just a murder sim. Um, and that was something that a lot of like cops were saying about Tarantino's comments that I didn't quite understand. It's like, can't be surprised that a guy who's, glorifying violence has a problem with the police or whatever. And it's like, are we really going back to that shit where it's like, we're going to deflect like this issue going on in this country now with shootings and stuff, whether regardless of what position you're on, now we're going to say, oh, it's because media. Like it's because the movies you watch, the games you
Yeah.
play, it's fucking music you listen to. It's not because, bullets and fucking aggressive human tendencies.
Fuck bullets.
Yeah.
Everybody's against guns. They really need to be against bullets. Guns without bullets are fine.
Well, yeah, they wouldn't shoot anyone.
Right. Yeah,
I
bullets
mean,
are the issue. Let's fucking
that's
boycott. We need.
actually that's not true. That guy on The Crow did die from a blank on set.
Well,
So,
no, it wasn't a blank.
but
It was
that
supposed to be a blank.
I thought it was a blank.
Mm.
And I thought it just hit him like, blank can fuck you up.
Well, yeah. There's been a lot of people killed from blanks because they'll put it up to their head thinking it'll be funny, and there's still the pressure wave that comes out. You're still in an explosion inside the gun that has to come out. You're
Now
not.
I
You're not really shooting. But no, Brandon Lee, not Brandon Lee. Maybe. I don't know. I don't. It was supposed to be blanks and it wasn't. At least that was always my understanding of it. All I know is I was really into. I think everybody in college, like especially when you go to an art school and everybody's gothy and emo-y and you're just in that stage of life. The Crow was like the best fucking movie I'd ever seen at that point in my life. And
All right, so this is apparently what happened. In the scene in which Lee was accidentally shot, Lee's character walks into his apartment and discovers his fiancee being beaten and raped by thugs. Actor Michael Massey's character fires a 44 Magnum Smith & Wesson Model 629 revolver at Lee as he walks into the room. A previous scene using the same gun had called for inert dummy cartridges fitted with bullets, but no powder or primer to be loaded in the revolver. For close-up scenes which utilize a revolver where the bullets are clearly visible from the front and do not require the gun to actually be fired, dummy cartridges provide a more realistic appearance than blank rounds, which have no bullet. Instead of purchasing commercial dummy cartridges, the film's prop crew, hampered by time constraints, created their own by pulling the bullets from live rounds, dumping the powder charge, then reinserting the bullets. However, they unknowingly left the live percussion primer in place at the rear of the cartridge. At some point during the filming, the revolver was apparently discharged with one of these improperly deactivated cartridges in the chamber, setting off the primer with enough force to drive the bullet partway into the barrel, where it became stuck. The prop crew either failed to notice or failed to recognize the significance of the issue, and then it shot him.
so yeah, it got stuck, and then when they fired a second time, it. Okay.
I mean, I'm not a spiritual person. I don't believe in an afterlife, but if there is one, I would be fucking pissed. If due to
Yes.
time constraints,
And
I
then
got
from the sounds of that, that means because what I'm picturing then is the bullet got lodged in the barrel. That's
right.
still not an issue until you fire a second one. And like I said, even blanks, even if the second one was a blank, it sounds like it wasn't. Anything that has that explosion, it compresses the air and makes all that pressure. If you have the barrel plugged by a stuck bullet, there's going to be a problem, and there was, and it's sad. And the not really funny thing that, if anything out of it that's interesting, and I forgot that's when it happened. that scene is like the very beginning of the movie. That's when he becomes the Crow.
Yeah. Thank
Fortunately,
God
it
they
was one
shot
of the
out of
last
order.
scenes.
Yeah.
Yes, and there are. I mean, there's scenes in that movie where you can tell it's not him playing the Crow, but there's not that many that they had to use a
Yeah.
stand-in.
Like they actually did a lot of that filming before that. Yeah, I mean
From my
that
understanding,
that
well, again,
movie
my,
that
my
movie's
last
all right.
understanding was wrong, but from what I understand, that was like one of the last scenes that they were filming. But
Yeah. I mean that movie's like all right, but I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
fucking believe like that's what you die on.
I know.
It's like are
Especially, I mean, he was the son of Jet Li, and he was pretty badass himself.
Bruce Lee.
Yeah, Jet Li, Bruce Lee. Um, but and it is Brandon Lee, right? The one that.
Yeah.
See, I always want to say like Jason Lee, who's a completely different person.
My name is Earl Lee.
Right. And I really like him too, but a whole different style and whatever. But to
Not
me,
for his kung fu.
Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee, and you yourself, he was a really I liked him as an actor, at least in that. I think that's the only thing I saw him in. Um, to go out that way though, that sucks. I mean, to go out anyway before your time sucks, but
Yeah.
and they say, oh, at least you die doing something you love. Still, nobody. I love fishing. I don't want to be shot while I'm fishing. Like that's
Yeah.
not a consolation,
I don't want to be fucking shot.
right?
They like of all the ways you can go, I imagine that hurts like a son of a bitch.
Plus, you just be
Um,
like, if anything, that's almost worse. Like you say, oh, doing something you love, like you're having an orgy with all the Playboy bunnies, and then somebody shoots you. You'd be like, what the fuck? Like that doesn't make it better.
yeah, like I want to die fucking a model. Like
Yeah.
dude, you're dying. You won't care.
Right,
Like
right. I guarantee, because there's guys out there that be like, man, if I could do this, do her or do whatever, it'd be worth it to get shot. It's like you say that until you get shot, and yeah,
yeah. Then you're
whatever.
doing nothing but fucking bleeding out, you dumbass.
I didn't
So
have this
this
whole
is
conversation in my notes, by the way.
yeah, I didn't I I got off track. I made a mistake. I've been like reading the news and then like I know you and me are on like different ends of a lot of subjects and that like oddly enough like it's not fun to me to like even try to like argue with you about it. Like so more I just like to pick your brain and see like what your stance is on it while never revealing how I feel.
It's because I'm
Um,
so intimidating.
but sometimes it's just really funny stories where it's like it is a polarizing discussion. Like, I just read this and it brought up the whole gun control thing for the millionth time, which we're going to talk about every week, it seems like. Not us, but the world.
Yeah.
Where, like, to me, this is just completely batshit crazy and silly. And I think even you'll agree. Where, like, this guy was walking around his front yard or something, and he had an assault rifle, and he just clearly looked, like he was about to fuck some shit up.
Yeah.
And so a neighbor called 911, and rather than send a cop to check things out, at least the 911 operator proceeded to lecture the caller about open carry law for like about an hour while the dude started killing all his neighbors and shit. And like,
That's nice. Yeah. He's allowed to do until he kill. Oh, now he's killing people. We should probably do something about that.
he's allowed to do that, but you're also allowed to send a cop to make sure that,
Well, I mean, and we talked because Ohio has open carry law. I mean, now you can get concealed carry permit as well. I say that like now, like it was recent. It's not. We've had it for a while, but they've always had, or at least for a very long time, open carry where I can walk down the street. I can even have the gun in my hand. That's legal. But
yeah.
doing it in a menacing way is not. And even if I'm not doing it in a menacing way, it probably behooves a cop to just pull over and be like, what's up? Like, why are you walking around? If I say, because I just like my gun, I'm carrying it. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like people bring their guns into where I work and stuff, and I mean, I'm, typical liberal sissy about it, where it's like, oh my God, a gun. Even though I've like grown up with them all my life, like I've never like been comfortable
No,
around them.
I don't like when people come into my work and they're allowed to, but I don't love the feeling that this person has a gun across the other
Yeah.
side of my desk. But
But I just thought it was like really funny that like there's a time and a place to have the argument. Before the incident happens is not the time to goddamn talk about like, well, he has a Second Amendment right. Like, fine, just check it out, like
well,
just make sure like he's not gonna use it right now on innocent people.
and
He
that's
might
why I'm
have
not a huge fan of the open carry law, because it does put cops in this like ridiculous situation where it's like, oh, he's just carrying it. That's perfectly legal. Now they should have sent somebody out to check that out.
yeah,
But
like
hell, if they get
regardless of
if they get out there and he's just like, oh, I'm just out here with my gun, they really can't do
yeah,
anything
if he
about
was
it.
just like out on his front yard, like had a workbench set up and just working on his gun or some shit,
Well,
like
hell, he
then
could have
yeah,
been marching back and forth, like patrolling with his gun. He's allowed to
that,
do that.
the neighborhood watch has gotten more serious than ever. Um, yeah,
But at least
maybe
send
something
somebody
like
out.
that.
Like, don't
Yeah, I
just
just thought
lecture
it
him
was
on the phone.
hilarious. Yeah, I just
You
thought it
mean
was hilarious
you're
that
you're
like,
calling us because he has an assault rifle and he hasn't killed anybody yet? Well, that's legal. Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
that's
I've
fine.
had the same thing happen in my neighborhood though. Like a neighbor across the street, he moved out in a rush. I believe I told the story where he left and then cop cars were like camping outside his house and shit. But before he moved out, he had a neighbor show up or whatever. He was having a barbecue or something, and the guy just pulled out an assault rifle and like I think he was just showing it off to them, and that's obviously why we didn't call the cops or anything. But you're like, you just that there's something about a guy walking around outside with an assault rifle that I feel like it, it goes beyond like the sort of basic rights thing. Like at a certain point, it's like that is instinctively making a situation more dangerous
That's
to
my
me.
problem with it, is because you get these people and they're like, I have a right to have a gun. And those are the same people that always accidentally fire the gun and kill the neighbor, like, because they're fucking stupid. It's like, you have a right to have a gun, but you're an idiot and I don't want you to have a gun.
Yeah, that is kind of my problem, and now this is just politics cast. I know the last thing probably anybody ever wanted from our show, but I don't care because
We're
I'm
going
an
to save
asshole.
the world one bullet at a time.
But like my problem with like open carry, like conceal carry stuff is like the logic of it. Like you have to like believe certain people are goddamn John McClane in order for it to, in order
Right.
for that to logically work in your head. Where it's like, I was watching, after I read the story where I got linked to it, I was watching two people argue about it on Twitter because when you're not in a Twitter argument, it's a lot of fun. Um, and I was watching them argue about it, and like the guy kept saying, like, "Oh, well, it's basic gun thing that you know who's behind your target, you know who's aware of your target." And to me, that requires like, even if I believe you're capable of that, I don't necessarily believe every gun owner would have
Right.
one on them is
Well,
going to
here's the thing:
like
the people
in the
that
heat of that moment where they're being robbed.
here's the thing: the people that make those arguments, they're not wrong.
That is what
Being
you're
through
trained to
police
do.
academy, yeah, we were. And I still, like, in the heat of the moment, if somebody was breaking in here and I felt my life or Tara's life was in danger, I can't guarantee that I'd be thinking about what's behind the person that's breaking in. I'd be thinking about, let's shoot this fucker that's breaking in. But you're supposed to. But the point remains: you can say that all you want. Well, that's basic gun, ownership. That's great. You've never met me before. Do you trust me to do that? Do you trust your life in my hands?
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
should
Like,
you? You don't know me.
yeah, like I can't. When it comes to something so dangerous and requires so much responsibility as a firearm, I can't go with the assumption that you're all
Responsible?
perfectly, yeah, perfectly responsible, perfectly qualified, that you're going to follow every bit of procedure that you have been taught and trained
And
with your firearm.
honestly, how many of these people that are gun nuts and want to carry and like have a fucking bazooka on their back at all time
Are
They
they
kind
trained at
of
all?
lends themselves to the kind of people that are irresponsible. And I'm not saying all of them. There are a lot of very responsible gun owners out there, but jeez, we have clients that I know carry, and I don't feel safe on the road with them in a car, let alone with them in the fucking gun, like in their possession. Like, yeah, but what can you do?
Well, you can lecture. You can let the person calling you terrified. If you're a 911 operator, you can lecture them for an hour of why they shouldn't be scared because it's the
Because he
law.
hasn't killed anybody yet.
Yeah.
But
Hey, I just thought that was a really
yeah,
fucked up, funny in a horribly tragic
yeah.
way story. Like, that's where we are in this country is like, even when we could prevent it, like shooting like that, we don't.
See, now to me, that sounds like 911 via Twitter. Like,
Yeah, just hey, I think there's a scary guy out there, and then just like a bunch of like responses on Twitter, like "fuck you, man, he's allowed to have it."
yeah, and then you start to get into, well, of course it's got to be a scary guy because you're sexist. It can't be a scary woman. And then, like, the conversation's just going every direction except for maybe somebody should check this out.
Hashtag send help. Why should I send help to you, you cis white male piece of
Right.
shit?
Uh,
There's a lot of black people who need our help right now, a lot more than you. Keep this hashtag for them, fucker.
uh, it's probably a good thing nobody's left watching our show at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. And Joystick Politics Cast would get. I guess that brings me to the
Well,
one.
no, we
I was going
can't
to
do
say we
it that
can.
much.
Yeah, it's about time to wrap this up anyway. But this was hilarious to me. Ohio, not election day, but voting day, whatever, was yesterday. And here in Ohio, the big thing was they were trying to legalize marijuana. Like, you
Oh, yeah,
hippies out
I've
there.
heard people talk about this. I don't know what specifically happened though.
Well, it failed miserably. Like, it wasn't even fucking close. Um,
Well,
I
what I
don't.
had heard from the various blogs and shit I frequent is
The
that
pot blogs,
the pot
that
blogs,
drug school. Anyway,
I am proud to be completely dependent on alcohol in my life, but I admit a lot of the most entertaining people on the internet to me do partake in the marijuana,
yes,
and
it's very
they were
prevalent
talking.
online. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's very only online though. It's very
Yes,
niche in our country. Um, but
apparently.
but they were like talking about how there was actually a bit of a movement in Ohio among the like pro marijuana people where like this was not good enough for them, so they were not going to support it.
Yeah.
Like, and it was like they took a very all or nothing approach
Well, they got
to.
nothing, so
So
yeah.
there you go.
Better luck next time.
Fucking
There
dumbasses.
part of the problem was if it was going to be legalized, they were going to restrict who can grow and sell it, and they don't want that. They're like, no, fuckers, we want to be able to grow and sell our own pot. It's like, yeah, good luck with that. I mean, I can't make my own alcohol and sell it without like a whole shit ton of licensing. But
A lot of, I don't talk to him anymore, but I've had a lot of friends who were pot enthusiasts, if you will. And they knew a lot about growing it. They knew a lot about, I think one of a former friend of mine who I haven't talked to in well over a year, but he worked at like a pot dispensary, and he grew his own shit. I can promise you, no one's talking about how great Ohio pot is. Like, oh man, where'd you get that
well,
shit?
and that's where part of this
Cleveland?
problem arises because the pro pot movement here in Ohio, their biggest argument hinges off the medicinal aspect, and I get
Like
that.
ever.
It does seem weird to me that they can't prescribe pot for medicine, but we use morphine in the hospitals. Like,
Way dangerous shit.
right. But what's funny is they use the medicinal pot argument, but it's extremely obvious that they don't give a shit about medicinal use. They want recreational use. And
Right. But I mean that's just if you look at Washington, California, and like all these states, that's how it always starts. is like they can only get their foot in the door by saying, well, this is just for medicine
Right.
or whatever. And then like, but we all know like you just go to like a fucking crummy doctor and be like, oh, I have, goddamn, my foot
Yeah, for
hurts.
some
And they're
reason
like,
there's dentists prescribing medicinal marijuana. And then the other
yeah.
thing is like, oh, but yeah, not the pills and not the strips. It has to be joints. It's like, okay. Like, what's funny to me is that they've been running a commercial here about this couple. They're like, we had to move to Colorado because our daughter needs pot for her medical condition, and we want to move back to Ohio. But then it's like the people turn around and be like, but it has to be
Why?
joints. I'm like, I know you're not giving. You better not be giving your like 6-year-old daughter a joint, because it's like, yeah, the pot helps, but you're giving her lung cancer. So,
Well,
congrats. But
I mean, there are healthier ways to. There's
But
so many
like we said, they
ways.
don't really want to ferment it, and that's fine. Just be honest
Yeah,
about it, guys.
yeah.
And I did not vote, and my sister-in-law was trying to like guilt trip me into this whole like, you need to vote because if you don't vote, you have no business complaining about how governments run. It's like, you know what? I know, I
That
understand
doesn't
what you're
make any
saying,
sense.
but I think this is the first time she's ever fucking voted. Is because she was trying to get, she wanted it legalized,
She wanted
right?
pie. Yeah.
But the thing
Um,
is, sometimes like for me not voting on that issue, and I don't know any of the candidates running for mayor and shit because I don't fucking care about that. Our local government is, it's a joke anyway. But for me, not voting on the pot issue is my statement, and it's basically like, I'm not going to vote for it because I don't want it and I don't care, but I'm not going to stop you guys if, you know, if
if it
enough
is
people want
legal,
it.
then
Right.
yeah, whatever.
But when she
Um,
starts doing this shit, like, well, you need to vote, it's like, if I'm forced to vote, I'm voting against it, because if I have to vote, I'm not voting for it. Like, the best thing for you is me not voting on it because I just don't care.
yeah, I can understand that on a certain level because I'm in the same boat. Like I don't give a fuck about pot
No, I mean,
personally. If
both of our
anything,
neighbors
I
on each side smoke it enough that like our neighborhood is in a constant purple like cloud in the summer.
if
And I'm
anything, I actually have a lot against pot because it's made a lot of my friends into really boring people.
yeah.
Um, but
Alcohol
I
doesn't
think
do that, by the way, kids. Alcohol makes you really cool and entertaining.
or yeah, or it keeps your goddamn worst qualities in here because you're completely alone. Um, but I think when it comes to a vote like that, in Washington I voted to legalize it.
You're part
Just
of the
because I
problem.
don't I yeah, just because I don't think that should be a crime. Like
Yeah.
I don't think people should be punished for having it, even though I don't like it personally.
I
I
here's
don't think it's an offense.
here's the law that I would vote for. Say you shouldn't be punished for having it. You should be allowed to smoke it. But if I have to smell it on you, you're fucking going to jail. Because
Well, then they're going to jail anyway because they all smell like it because
yeah.
they don't wash. It's
Well,
a
it's one of those
stereotype.
things. I know, especially back in my crazy college days when I drank way more than I should, where the day after a big party, you'd be like, "Yeah, nobody knows I partied yesterday," but you smell like to the rest of the world like the stale
Just
like
still,
beer, like almost like
yeah,
you're peeing beer through your pores. But you
yeah,
don't smell it because you're like, oh yeah, I showered. It's like, yeah, but you're still like sweating out alcohol. Pot's
yeah.
the same way. I've so many potheads. It's hilarious watching them act. Like, we'll have them come into our office, and you can tell they just fucking like got done lighting up, and they'll come in like they're so like smooth. Like, this person's never gonna know that I'm high. It's like, yeah, we know. Like, I could smell you when you got out of your car before you even came inside the building. But
Yeah. I can just say that like how much has changed since at least in my town since the legalization. Fuck all.
yeah,
Like it's
well, that's
like if anything's changed, it's like one of my friend's parents is smoking pot now, and it's
well,
like
they
and
probably were before, but they were hiding it.
yeah, yeah, they're hiding it better
I,
now. They just
that's the thing. If you tell me like if it's legalized, everybody's gonna do it, and I'm like, I can't name one person I know that doesn't smoke now that will if it gets legalized.
I think the guy the artist for Penny Arcade. I think actually he was one of those people though, who was like, now I'll try it. You know, like because he's so nervous. Like
I know
you
it's
can
funny because I just got done saying that, but I'm kind of one of those people that if it was legal, I'd be more curious about trying it. I probably still wouldn't because I'm 33. I've made it this long without it. Why would I need it in my life? But
I would love if you were one of those people that who like tried it when you're like, you know, you're in your mid to late 30s and then like you totally flip like this, you know, clean cut insurance guy like turns into fucking the Big Lebowski.
it's cute that you think I'm clean cut. But yeah, I get your point.
I mean, you
Like
have to wear
I
it.
start a Grateful Dead cover band, like,
Yeah.
but
I mean, people can just watch this show. There's a clear difference between you and like what I got fucking going on. I haven't shaved in a month. This is
well,
the patchy shit that happens when I don't shave for a month, by the way.
the honest truth there is I would be the same way, except I can't grow facial hair. It just doesn't happen. This, yeah, well, my light's too bright. I need to get a fucking diffuse screen for it, but um, I haven't shaved in 3 days. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So
In some ways, I'm jealous of that. Like, yeah, facial hair is like once it gets this feeling, it's fucking gross. Like your face just feels
that's
gross.
the
You
thing.
feel like
I say I can't grow it. I can't. I can get to not quite that point as far as I've got, but it grows so slow for me, and you get stuck at that point for so long. It's so fucking annoying. It's like sweaty and itchy, and
feel like a really like nasty rotten jungle fruit
yeah,
where it's just like your fucking gross skin with like this fuzz on it, and it's just like you expect it to be on like on an episode of like River Monsters or something. Like well maybe we can use this shit as bait.
everything I take away from River Monsters is like, oh, and it's a really deadly situation. If lightning strikes this tree, and then the tree falls into this generator, and then the generator falls into the water, and then a shark comes up and gets pissed off because it got hit in the head with the generator, and then stirs up an alligator, I might get bit. And it's like, okay.
That's like a fucking children's book. Like
I know.
and then the generator hits an alligator, and then the alligator hits the fish, and then the fish bit me. The end.
And he doesn't, Jeremy Wade, I love him. I love River Monsters. It's one of my favorite shows. But it is very transparent how much they overhype the danger. And that's probably not fair to say because he is out in like wading in barefoot in these like muddy rivers in the middle of the Amazon, like thousands of miles from any civilization. So there is danger there. Like they're not making up the fact that it's a dangerous situation, but they do overplay it. And then the narrator, well, he narrates it, but he always gets like over dramatic with it as well. And that's part of the reason why I love the show. It's because it's just kind of ridiculous in that point. But I love River Monsters. That's one of it's literally like one of my top 5 shows on TV.
Yeah. So I remember all I know about River Monsters, all that I remember about it, there was one commercial where it's doing that rapid cut shit all trailers do for the next episode. And there's just one where he's being slowly pulled in off his boat. And it was just, oh, and I was like, there's no way the episode can top that because he won't actually fall
No.
in. And so it's like, you know, I'm like, I'm not going to watch that episode because I just want that feeling of like, oh, and then he falls in.
You'd be surprised though. Like there was an episode where he was on the banks of this like completely raging, like totally whitewater, you know, not like, oh, it's a swift stream, like fucking rapids in the middle of some jungle. I can't remember if it's the Amazon or what. And he hooked a fish and the fish was too powerful for him, or it was heading somewhere where he was going to be in danger of it tangling. And he decided he'd be in a much better position if he went to the other opposite shore. And with this giant fucking fish on the line, he just jumps into this river. And
he'll dive in on his own.
Yeah, and he can like barely touch, and he's
wanna-
like constantly like on the brink of just being swept to oblivion by this fish he's attached to.
I just don't want him to have any choice in the matter.
Yeah.
Like, I just want nature to, like, I want him to like feel the full effect of fucking nature.
Yeah, and you're saying that, but I think they're out filming the next season right now, and we're probably tomorrow. I'm gonna wake up and it'll be like, oh, Jeremy, TV personality Jeremy Wade was killed in a tragic fishing accident, and I'll just be sitting here like crying, like fuck you, Ben, this is your fault.
It's not tragic. That's what will fucking happen. Your show was called River Monsters. You
True.
can't take on the biggest goddamn shit in the ocean and not expect to like, drop on the food chain a little bit.
And to be like professionals and actually use callbacks and stuff in her show, at least he died doing what he loved.
Yeah, I'm sure that will be his last thought.
Yeah, I've wasted my life. Glug 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 glug.
So, did you have any notes? Well, we're at the pretty much the end of our
Yeah,
show here,
I'm
but
done with my
we can
notes.
wrap it. We're
But
out of
so
notes.
yeah, yeah.
Was there
But
any news or anything we needed to hit
probably,
on?
but I didn't think of any that I cared to talk about.
Uh, yeah, Kojima Productions LA got shut down. That's sad.
No,
Then,
we didn't fire anybody. We just shut down a studio. And Kojima's, we haven't split with him. He just doesn't work for us anymore.
to Konami's credit, they actually their response was to confirm they laid people off. But I felt bad about that joke because I didn't. I a lot of people seem to think that was like based off like an actual report when I made that joke on Twitter. And I was like, no, no, guys, I'm just calling back to when they said Kojima
yeah, yeah.
was on vacation.
But again, it strikes me as odd because today it was this, oh, Kojima Productions LA shut down. They fucking said that like 4 months ago.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
why are we treating it like it's a shock or like it's brand new news?
was
I
that Productions or was it LA? Because LA was the studio who they worked on the online stuff.
Well, and that's
Uh,
kind of where I think it's come because I know I heard that the LA one was shut down or going to be shut down a while ago. I'm sure it was just physically shut down now because they've rolled out the online stuff. So they probably had them around until that got rolled out. So that's probably where it becomes news. But it's not like we didn't know it was coming.
right.
It is sad.
So
I mean, it sucks when anybody loses their job like that. But
yeah, but like those walls are gonna crumble when they're tearing everything down. Nintendo announced their new mobile thing. I don't know if you saw this.
uh-uh.
Uh, I hopefully I can find the name of it. It's one of those weird like me something goddamn things, and it's basically just a social network thing. And
Sweet.
and so like they're trying to. I frankly I love it because when any time a company's like, oh, we're gonna do a mobile thing, I kind of always want it to fail. Just
Just
it's
out of
just out
principle.
of
Yeah.
spite.
Yeah.
Um, but
Everybody
like
was
people
so
came out.
sure it was going to be Pokemon Go, though.
Everybody wanted like fucking these big names and shit, and it's like, I'm sure that'll happen eventually, but the first thing is going to be some dumb like cash in shit.
Especially from Nintendo. And I don't say that out of spite. We both love Nintendo, but they're Nintendo. Like,
Right.
why do we have expectations at this point?
Yeah. Um, and so like the response to it when they announced it was like, a bunch of these financial advisors are like, they're fucked. Why would they make this? And I don't think they're any more fucked than they were the 8 billion times before they were fucked. But
It's,
it's just, they're like, why, when we have, Facebook, why would we do anything? Like, why would we go to your thing now?
Facebook is perfect. I love Facebook.
I mean,
I hate
it's
Facebook.
it's a good point. If I'm not willing to go to Facebook, why would I go to their
That's
thing?
the thing is I hate Facebook. I use it, but like nominally, like not very much. But that doesn't mean I
You could
need
tell.
another app or another thing to come around and like top it. It's because I don't fucking care. Like, just quit doing it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be better than Facebook. You'll be different. And if I don't like Facebook, I'm not going to like your like crappier Exhibit A, Google Plus. Like, what the fuck was that? I say that we
Well,
have an Njoycast Google Plus account because you have to anymore. They
yeah, it's all tied in. But I mean that the one thing that I had going for it was like at least that's like tied to your YouTube and everything, so like you can kind of understand where that idea came from at least. But it wouldn't work, like the only reason like Facebook took off was because like MySpace lost its mind
Yeah.
and they like completely fucking changed everything and MySpace was just as stupid. But we
Did you know
honestly we probably
MySpace is still around? Like, who the fuck uses it?
the same way like a Ghost is around, same way Tupac is around. You know, it, it's dead
Yeah.
for the most part. But um, yeah, social media is like I just Twitter is good enough. Twitter's not.
Now, does the Nintendo version of like the social network, instead of having a like button, does it have like a please understand button? Like,
Please understand. No, but it has a take a break button.
yeah.
Um,
You've been typing this post for 30 seconds. You should probably take a break and remember to go outside.
yeah. Um, do,
Can
do
you
you?
imagine, just to go off on that tangent for a second, like, this is where my mind goes. That's too dark, but I'm picturing somebody on the Nintendo social media network posting this like super long like suicide note post, and they're like halfway through, and all of a sudden it pops up as like, "You've been typing this for a while. You should probably take a break and go outside."
I feel that way every time I try to write something.
Yeah.
Clearly, I haven't wrote shit lately. So I'm sorry, there's not a lot to say about the Binding of Isaac that I don't say on the fucking stream.
We
Damn it.
ruined it by doing these week long. God, these weekly podcasts. It's like everything that I want to say, I don't need to put it like down like in words
On
and just
paper.
yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to read that shit anyway. Bunch of assholes.
Take that, audience.
You uncultured freaks.
Nobody can understand the genius of Njoystick.
I am
at a time when the
wordsmith.
internet is clamoring for more opinions from straight white guys, like there is a shortage of video game commentary from people like me and you. But yep, nobody will watch our show. I don't get it.
Yeah. That is a. I saw that on Twitter once. Like I didn't take it personally because I'm not currently looking to get hired at a website, but I am noticing a lot more websites like, well, we're only looking for women, and it's like, well, I'll work on that. I'll try
Not
to.
to get
I'll
like
talk to
back
the right.
into like political stuff, especially when we're trying to wrap it up. But that's the one part that sucks about it. I get it. There is not a lot of diversity, and there is a lot of discrimination in hiring. It's easy. We're both in a position where a lot of times I start to feel like, oh, we live in a world now that's a way better about that, and it's not. I mean, when we can be surprised by it, that does show. I hate to use the word privilege because that pisses me off, but it does show our where we're coming from. But at the same time, when I hear people I said that as a joke because it's been bugging me. I keep seeing it. It's like, oh, yeah, there's just way too much coming from straight white guy. And like, as a straight white guy, should I not get to pursue my passions? Like, should I just quit? Be like, oh, there's enough of you guys doing this already. Like,
Yeah, well, it all comes. I think the problem with that philosophy isn't, and even in this case, the Twitter, it was like, look, if you're a guy, you can't apply. It's just we're looking primarily at women and stuff, and fair enough. As long as you're giving like people a fair consideration, a fair shot, then that's all I can really ask. But like my fucking dog interrupted my train of thought. Yeah, it's gone. Fuck it. God damn it. I had a great point there.
my thought was going to be, that's fine, and I get it, and it is important to have representation of all sorts of walks of life and gender and everything else. But then when your criticism of somebody's work comes down to like, well, you're just another, cookie cutter person that we already have a bunch of in the industry. And I don't mean from, I'm just trying to avoid saying straight white guy for like the 30th time in 5 minutes. But
it's the new gameplay
yeah,
of this show.
But if your sole criticism of somebody is like, yeah, well, but you're just another straight white guy, I'm like, well, that's not real fair either. Because like I said, should I not like video games? Should I not like talking about them or writing about them because there's other white guys that do?
Well, now I got my point back. I remember now. Like the fundamental flaw, I think, with that kind of reasoning is this idea that, and it's something I struggle with too, because, you know, there's a lot of people in our position where it's like we're trying to do this, whatever it is we do, and it's really hard to really break into the industry, but it gets that idea into our head that there's only like limited spots, and there are in a way, but it doesn't mean you can't do this, and it doesn't mean your position and your perspective isn't a valid one. Like, you know, it's, I think to do it to anybody is a weird like way of telling people to shut up that I can't encourage that. Like, because, you know, regardless of your background, like you might have a voice and a perspective that's worth hearing,
or you might be boring and generic, like, and then you end up on Njoycast,
and then you're on our show,
right?
And then there's a place for you.
But so anyway, we're probably like in over our heads at this point.
I'm never in over my head because I'm not going to check my Twitter feed after this.
I'm short. So I'm like always over my head. But talk about embarrassing. Like I was at the store right before the show, and at the grocery store, and there was a guy. I was getting beer, kids, a responsible adult thing to do after work. And there was a guy, I didn't even notice him because he was on the other like side of the aisle, but I heard like, "Excuse me, sir, can you help me?" And so I turned around like a good person, like fighting every instinct to just ignore it. And it was a guy in a wheelchair, and he's like, "Oh, can you help me reach this?" I'm like, "Sure." And I go over there, and it's like, "Oh, it's this thing, you know, on what he wanted was on the top shelf, of course, but it was pushed all the way back too." And so I like go over there to help him, and I get there and I look up and I'm like, I can't reach that. Like, so then at this point, there was like a very tall guy that happened to be also in the aisle, but even further down. So I'm like, hold on a second. And so then I have to go get this actual tall guy. Like, hey, this guy needs help, and I'm too short to help him. So,
excuse me, real man, can you help me help someone?
This is the world I live in. People talk about privilege, and
it's the Russian egg doll of like grocery store situations.
Yeah. And then to put a cap on it a few minutes later, I was like down in another aisle, and kind of behind me, I heard what sounded like somebody dropping some glass bottles, and I like he probably accidentally hit something with his chair or dropped something trying to reach it, but I just can't like turn around and look over my shoulder, 'cause then I'm back in the situation.
Yeah.
But no, that always sucks, because I'm more than happy to help. It's like, oh, sure, like I understand you can't get up and get it, and you walk over and you're like, oh, I can't help it. I don't have an excuse.
Now you know how, that's how it feels at work. Anytime anybody needs anything from me,
yeah.
Or it's like, how can I help you? Well, I want to find this movie. I can't help you.
No, yeah. Good luck. Well, the movies are over in that section, right over there.
But I'm looking for very specific. I'm sure you are, and I wish you luck.
It's got to be in the movie section. That's where we keep them.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do, is act like you're giving them the answer. Like, don't be a smartass about it. Like, be genuine.
Yeah, that's actually what I have to do more often than not. Yeah, I always say like, well, I am so sorry about this, and I will let my manager know I could not find it and stuff. But I'm not gonna do shit, because better luck next time. If it was where it was supposed to be, I would have been able to find it. That's my excuse.
That is the moral of this week's podcast. If it's where it's supposed to be, you'll be able to find it.
And you'll be able to find Njoystick at Njoystick. I had no idea how to like jump into that.
Yeah, this new format basically is you can find us at that bar that's been down at the bottom of the screen the whole fucking time.
Yeah, but if you're listening just to the audio for some reason, uh, get with the fucking program.
Yeah.
Um,
We're a video
yeah,
cast now. We've moved up in the world.
but yeah, if you saw this on YouTube or whatever, we are live at Twitch every week, twitch.tv/Njoystick, official Twitter feed at Njoystick, Facebook/Njoystick. I didn't even know that was a thing. That's not true.
We don't
But
really use it because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I hate Facebook, but it's there.
yeah, and you can check out Steve's Twitter at Phaser3D. You can find me at BP Matlock, where we are losing our minds slowly to the digital age. More opinions to come in the hot seat.